Those are the techniques that I use in my cooking. Those techniques I feel are essential for the seasoned cook as well as the novice. These techniques are meant to stimulate you, to excite you, so that you get involved into the basics. I use those techniques certainly in my book, but they are more than that. They are meant to be used in any cookbook that you have at home. I hope you're going to enjoy them, and happy cooking. Everything is important in the kitchen, especially even tying your apron and tying your towel. Usually you will fold it like that a couple of times, no more, to get a thicker front so that you don't burn yourself here. You tie this around with a double knot and usually hide it underneath, this way. And then your towel, take it by the corner, shake it like that, and you attach it to this one time, and you come back another time, so that it is attached, you know, it holds, but if you have to take it out, it comes out easily. So here is the way of doing it, once and twice. This is it. Knives are very important for the chef. They're an extension of your finger. Basically, you need 3 knives. A chopping knife, 8 to 12 inch, depending on your hand, utility knife, and a paring knife. Yes, probably have 200 knives in my house. In any case, the knife is made of teeth here, and when you bang the knife around, those teeth get out of whack. Anything which cuts from a scalpel to a saw is made of teeth. So you have to realign the teeth, and you realign it by running it on a steel, like this. On the steel, you have to be careful first to apply pressure. You have to cover the blade completely, that is starting at the heel, finishing at the top, rather than just the center. And not to move your wrist, otherwise you take out. That will realign the teeth, but at some point, there is no more teeth. You have to have a stone, and it's usually a wet stone, and you have to apply pressure on it, about 25 to 30 degree angle on each time, and you have to spend time with it. This is a fairly coarse stone, and sometimes you have very finishing stones, which are very fine, like this one. Or you can even use an electric machine like this one. You use that stone here because you see there is a segment of the stone and the knife, which if you don't remove them with water or oil, will get back into the stone. The stone will get like a piece of marble, and it won't be abrasive anymore. If the knife is sharp enough, it should be able to, because this is a very overripe tomato, that knife should be able to cut into it. Now the proper usage of a knife is to grab the knife and glue it to your finger. Now your finger are never this way, always this way, and that thumb here, if it's in front, the tip will go, so it's in the back. People use it more on the side, more in front, doesn't really matter where it's there. I can look at you and chop because that knife is glued to my finger. That hand is just a dummy going up and down. That hand order everything. I push the knife, wherever I push the knife, it's going to go. I don't really have to look at it. It's not difficult, but you have to learn how to do it. Down and forward, usually. Practice with a cucumber. It's a nice way of practicing. You empty a cucumber with a spoon, you go on one side, you go back on the other side. Rather than try to go totally in the center, it will break the cucumber. You go down and forward, down and forward. It's already the process of cutting. Down and forward, and eventually or backward or forward. But there is that motion of cutting. If I slide the knife against my finger, if I don't move that finger, nothing happens. That finger starts moving like les petits rats de l'opéra, you know, the little dancer. And if I move very slowly, I'm going to have very, very thin slice here. I'm going to have extremely thin slice because I move very, very slowly. If I move a little faster and very faster, the point is that I will end up from a slice like this to like this to like this. Doesn't matter. You hear the same sound. It's a question of moving your finger back and forth. When you use something like parsley, you want to gather it into a bunch and slice it again. The same thing we did before. Then gather it together again. Now, often people will put the palm of their hand on the table and cut it this way, which is fine for certain things. Parsley has fiber. The proper way is to have the front of the knife first, because when the down go, you will automatically have that motion of cutting. So this is the proper way of chopping parsley, with that motion. That's it. When you cut an onion, again, you cut in half, and you go with the onion, you go far away, and again cut. This is that motion. And then you want to cut across this way. And finally, again, the same technique to get the smallest possible chopped onion this way. If the knife is sharp, you won't cry, because you won't release too much of the sulfuric acid, which makes you cry. Likewise, when you cut bread, for example, often people will put their knife and apply pressure on this. And here is what happens, you crush the bread together. What you have to do is to go down and forward, really using the blade from here to there, that motion, rather than crushing it. That's the basic principle of the knife. The technique to saute is simple, but a bit different with different pans. You can see a skillet like that, it has a sway. So the movement that you do is elliptical. It comes back on itself. I cannot do that with a straight edge. If I do this, it will bang against and back up to you. So on a straight edge like this, you have to grab it and you have to really actually jump it. Not really in that movement, but up, jumping. And that's all there is to it. Freshly ground pepper is essential. And I use black peppercorn, that's the one I like the best. When the pepper comes out like that, you can really smell and taste the essential oil. If you have pepper ground for weeks, it doesn't have any taste. It burns your mouth, doesn't have much taste. Sometimes in recipe you say use mignonette. And mignonette is crushed pepper like that, usually black pepper. You can use a crusher like this, but even easier, you use a skillet and you make it roll on top of it. You can see, bring it back together. And this is what you use for a steak au poivre. See the steak au poivre, you dip your steak in it on one side and on the other side, and you saute it. This is mignonette. There is many different corkscrew openers on the market here. I have three of the most common. The rabbit here, this is for old wine, and then the classic one used by most sommeliers. When you open a bottle of wine, often the sommelier tells you to cut it here or underneath. Some insist underneath. I mean, what's important is that the wine itself, when it's poured, does not touch the metal. The metal or plastic now, most of the time. So on this one here, you would want to make sure that you go in the center of the cork, hold it a little bit, and start pouring, opening it with the first layer here, this way, and then lift it up, go to the second level, and lift it up again. So it's an easy way of opening it. If you have an old bottle of wine, what I like to do is just to cut the top this way, and then using that two-pronged things, well, it's an old bottle of wine because often the cork will have a tendency to crumble. So you use this. One is longer than the other. So you put one first, then the other one, and you kind of jigsaw or move it this way back and forth to get it. And here, I probably have to put it between my leg to twist it like that and bring it back up. You have made no hole in the cork at that point, and if it's old and crumbly, that's how you save it. If I want to show that cork, the way that I cut it on top, I will cut that first level here, lift that up, put my cork in it, fold it, and I'll present my cork like that. If you want to open champagne, you first have to chill it. And a common mistake is done, people put ice in there, but cannot push it back in. You have to put water. Also that you have water, very easy to go in, and that would cool up very fast. If you really want to go even faster, you put salt in it. And the salt make it much colder, and it will chill very fast. Now when you're ready to open it, clean up your bottle of champagne from the bottom. Now you always have to watch out for the pressure in there. Find the little round thing of metal. Take this out. There is usually a little red, oh, here it is, yes. And then you unscrew this, putting your thumb on top of it, just to make sure. And then press it, move the cage out. Okay, now the secret to open the bottle of champagne, grab the bottom part of it, your cork, don't tug the cork, turn the bottom part of it, and theoretically it shouldn't make much of a noise, just a little bit of noise this way. When you pour champagne, you always pour twice. The first time the foam comes up, so if you have several glasses, you serve them, and you pour a second time after. À votre santé. I like to present my butter nicely at the table when I have a party. And often I put it into a little container like that, very tight, and I cover it with plastic wrap so it does not pick up taste in the refrigerator, because butter will pick up taste in the refrigerator. To make it a bit nicer, you can use a fork, let's say, and just do a little design like this. Then, you know, go into my garden, I have a couple of leaves of one eatable flower or another, and I put it there. And this is it. It's a nice presentation of butter. Another way is using a paring knife, and if your butter is the right temperature, to scrape it on top of the butter like this, and then you roll it around so that it comes to join on the other side at the beginning of the flowers. Well, I can put it here. And then you redo it again. And the second one, you do it in a tighter scroll like this to do the center of the flowers. And then I will take this to put it directly in there. There, you see. Now you can use it right away, of course, put it on top of this, but often I will put it directly into ice cold water so it doesn't pick up any taste. In the refrigerator it becomes very hard, and then I can grab it like this one is hard now, and I could roll the edge in paprika, you know, to give it a bit of color, like, you know, when you're serving something with a bowl of butter. So you will have a little bit or two, and that's basically it. You know, you put it right on top and serve it. There is many ways, especially in baking, that you have to know how to cut pepper in one way or the other to fit your mold, and I'm going to show you a few, like starting with a cookie sheet like that. So when I have to do this, I butter usually half of the pepper. Use your hand, it's the best way. Half of the pepper. What you do after, you fold the other half. It's buttered on each side. If you want to do a cookie sheet like that, what you do in addition, you fold it in four, and from that part here, which has no opening, you make an incision here. You know, like this. You cut that here. Now what I do, you open it. I will put it butter side down first, just to butter the bottom, then lift it up and put it back on the other side. Now it will glue to both sides. Look at what I did on the side here. I will have those two things which are going to cross over to fit in the corner. So this is totally molding when you do a roulade or something like this and you want it to be totally, that's how you do it. Now when you do something wrong like that, this is a flan ring with removable button, you have to have a piece of paper which is at least as large as this. Again, it can be buttered or not depending what you do, but you fold it in half, in quarter, and after, from that part where you have no opening here, you grab it and you do a triangle, another triangle here, smaller and smaller, and another triangle here. Now I will measure this from the center here to here. I'll probably cut it here because I need a little bit of the edge. So I will cut it right around here to make sure that this will fit good on the side. I will fringe the side a little bit with the scissor. Now I can open it. And it's going to fit here in the corner when you have to put rice or beans in it sometimes. You cook something this way. Now if you do something like this, like a kouglof or another cake with the thing in the center, you do the same thing, again folding it in smaller and smaller triangle. Now I measure this from the center here to here, which is this, and we measure it again so that from here on the center. And then if I have something to cool off, this will fit exactly into my mold here, which is the idea. Maybe the one which is used the most is the cornucopia. And what you have to do is to cut a triangle like this, a right-hand triangle. If you remember a little bit your geometry, you have to fold it in the center of the hypotenuse, bring the other side back on, and now with my thumb I go down, and with my finger up, I'm pulling it up to make it until I have a real point here. And then I fold that inside. You have to fold this carefully so that it doesn't undo. We use hundreds of different ways of using that in pastry. One way, often you put it in a glass, it's easier to do, is the use of chocolate. A little bit of melted chocolate in there. When you take it like this, where you have the fold, You want to fold it on top of the seam here on one side, the other side, and back inside until it came to a very fine point here. And then, of course, you use that to write happy birthday or, I mean, different type of decoration that you do, of course, with chocolate. See the way you cut the paper. A special technique to do garlic, you have head of garlic like this. Actually, try to get the big leaves around like this. And then you put it on the side with the palm of your hand. The garlic will separate, especially if the garlic is a bit dry like this one. Now you should always take the stem of the garlic, and you might as well doing it before you peel it, because if you do it before you peel it, when you crush it a little bit this way, that will release the skin easily. If you don't remove it before, you have to remove it after, and it's stay attached to this. You can use garlic with a vegetable peeler like this to do garlic flake, which are very nice, to saute with pasta or whatever, very thin like this. But conventionally, the garlic is crushed. When you crush it, you bring it closer to here because you have to clear up your finger with that knife. You go down on top of it and forward. To release the essential oil, there is 2 essential oils in garlic, which give you that sticky mixture that you have in it. Now I can keep the palm of my hand on the table and just rock it, and the reason is that this is crushed. So I'll go around, and I clean my knife. Clean your knife a couple of times to really have a puree of garlic, classic way. Now when you do a carrot, one of the mistakes, people don't cut the end of it. First, you should cut both hands. Use a vegetable peeler. Now the idea is not to go this way and then this way and do the end. You do it in one time. The thin part here, and your finger cannot be higher than the carrot. It has to clear the vegetable peeler. So not this way, this one, it has to rotate on your hand into one streak. Because now the end is flat, and that's it. Proper way of peeling a carrot. I love leek. There is nothing like leek and potato soup. When you buy a leek, and sometimes they can be expensive, all you discard is that part. Then look at the outside like this. Maybe the first one is kind of tough, as you see it's dirty. So I would remove that. Actually, I wash that and keep it for stock. The second leaf is tender about here. The third one, tender about here. The fourth one here. Maybe the fifth one, and so forth. I mean, the idea is to go into the leek when it becomes lighter in color, not really to remove all of this. This is expensive. Then you want to wash it. You open it in usually 4, or 6, like this, to expose the center. It's really in the center that you will see that you have the dirt. That's it. So then you want to wash it. Wash it under cold water. You know, in the sink, it's very good. But certainly you have to wash it. And even when you wash it after you slice it, don't pour that into a colander, because if I were to put my hand in the bottom of this, there's a fair amount of dirt there. So you use the leek in different way. You can look at this way. Again, the same slicing technique that we've done. That would be for soup, that would be for stew. And as you can see, it would be the light green as well as dark green. Often with the white of the leek here, we do what we call a julienne. What you do, you cut the leek in half. This has been organized by Mother Nature, as you can see, except the root. So that is all separated, so you don't disturb it. You fold it in half, and then from the side here, you slice it into what we call a julienne. That is a long strip, those long strips, which we use a great deal in modern cooking, in a julienne of leek. When you buy asparagus, look at them. I have 2 types of asparagus here. This one has a tight head, like the bud of a flower. That's what you want. Firm, very firm, thick, fat, and firm. This one is already, you see the flowers, the petal of the flowers are opening. It's more flexible. It's a much older specimen. So I would go for this. The asparagus is going to be good from here to there, and once it's changed color, this is going to be tough. So I peel that lower part of the asparagus, otherwise I have to get rid of it, which is a shame. So use a vegetable peeler, put it flat on the table, not with your hand underneath because you're too high. Don't lift up the asparagus because it will crack. Make it roll and start here. Go right against your finger. You don't have to worry. You're not going to cut yourself here. You go all around. It's like, you know, a flower that you've done, and at the end now you can break it. Now that part is just as tender as that part. Now the asparagus can be cooked whole, which is often that I do, and sometimes we cut them on a bias to saute them this way, in a skillet. Asparagus just sauté with a little bit of butter, delicious. When I was a kid, we really have to string the beans on each side of the beans. Now beans do not have string anymore. Yet, when you do peas, for example, then you have to open on the side where there is a ridge. That's where you have to put your thumb and open them this way. There is different size in the pod usually, and then you run them this way. Sometimes the snow peas or snap peas have string. So you start not on the side of the flowers here, but on the other side and go down. You see? And then you twist around, break it on the other side and go down on the other side. When you get to fava beans, you take them out like the peas again. They are bigger, more cottony, and most recipe will tell you to remove the shell from the outside. So what you do is to drop this in boiling water for a minute or so, and after that you take just a little bit of the skin here, and then you press, and it will come out. That's the easiest way of doing it. I often use the kernel of corn in my recipe, either sauté or in the food processor, sometimes even in the blender to make a real puree and cook it to make like fresh polenta. And when you cut the corn, you know, I cut it in that direction, you can cut it in that direction, but often people will take their knife and apply pressure here. And as you can see, it is not easy. Why? Because I'm using about 1 inch from the center of the knife here. And that's the wrong position of the knife. From that position, I turn here, I start here, and I finish there, and all of a sudden, it slides very easily. As you can see, because I am using the knife the right way. These are small details will make a difference. You can scrape this. This is the proper way of using your knife. Too often when I go into the kitchen, I see the stem of the broccoli in the garbage can. Of course, the head of the broccoli or the flowers should be separated into little floweret like this. But this, in my opinion, is the best part of the broccoli, providing that you peel it. And there is a thick, heavy peel, you know, that you go on the outside. Here it is. And you can do it in a different way, in a julienne or sauté, but certainly that part here is the best part of the broccoli. It comes like this, same thing on the cauliflower. And you can see it here, this is tender, much more tender than that. So never throw out the stem of your broccoli. When you do spinach, you know, when you have the baby spinach, like the one in the center here, then you keep the whole leaves, of course. When it comes to the outside, and those are not too large, but sometimes they are even much larger than that, what you have to do is to fold the leaves of the spinach and pull it out here. And this is the way, and don't throw that out too, you can make a soup with it. When you cook all artichoke, you want to cut the end of the leaf, like I'm doing here, because there is prickle on it. And you want to buy beautiful artichoke. You cook that in boiling water, wet enough so that they are tender, and then you remove the center and the choke. However, when you go to the market, when I go to the market, and if I see some artichokes, and these ones are still pretty nice, but they're already pretty yellow and dark, that's when you buy them for artichoke bottom. They are less expensive. So first, don't throw out the stem. Again, the stem, you want to peel it, just like you do for the broccoli. You want to put a little bit of lemon juice because that discolor. And then you cook it. This is very tender when it's cooked. Now, if you don't know how to do an artichoke, it's a bit tricky. So you have to do what I'm doing here, at least a few times to get into the mood. And what I'm doing here, I'm doing actually the same way you would do if I was eating an artichoke. I'm breaking the artichoke and pulling down. And you can see that here and here, where the meat should be, it stays right there because I break and pull, break and pull, break and pull. If I pull it this way, and I remove the piece of meat, here it is, which I shouldn't. So I do that to be all around, at least all of the bottom of the artichoke is clear, so I know I'm not going to cut into it with my knife. Then I cut the top, as you do normally. You can use a small knife, you can actually use a good vegetable peeler and just clean it on the outside. And that, for people who've never done an artichoke bottom, probably the safest way of doing it, because often we have a tendency to cut into it. You do an edge here, and that's it. You want to put some lemon on it, because you cook it with a little bit of lemon. This becomes a receptacle, and you fill it up with spinach or poached eggs or anything you want. So here it is, it has to be. Now, if you're a bit more proficient with the knife, as professional, conventionally the way we do it, we cut it here and I cut around with the knife this way. You can see here, it's like a cone that I have done here. And I can remove the front. I can cut it up to here. Actually, those leaves are pretty tender. I can remove the center here, but that I can cook as well. And now I'm left with that piece, and this is what we call turning an artichoke. Notice that my knife is straight up. I go one layer straight up because there is an angle here. When I get to the end of this, my knife goes this way, and I do another turn around. I don't stop in between, of course. When I get to the end here, I go flatter, and I continue again. So this is the process of turning, keep turning, turning, tourner an artichoke, turning an artichoke. This is the process here. Even if there is a little bit of grain left over, it's fine. And these artichokes are placed into water, lemon juice, a dash of olive oil if you want, and you cook them. As you can see here, I have those leaves from the inside. This one, I left the stem out of it, which you can do this way. But you see that the center, the choke, should slide out very easily. And now it can be stuffed with something or cut into quarter like this, which look good. You can keep them basically a week in your refrigerator, fill them up when you need it with a poached eggs or whatever. Technique of artichoke bottom. In many recipes that I use pepper, I like to peel the pepper. Sometimes I put it on top of the stove or under the broiler and I char it all around, and you put it in a bag, let it steam 5-6 minutes, then the skin peeled up. It's one way of doing it, but often if I have one, I may do a vegetable peeler with that. And then along the way, obviously, as you can see, there is split here, and I don't have access with my vegetable peeler to those split here. So you go all around wherever you can get it, and in the bottom. And now I cut right into those split here. You see? Here, there, here, and there. So that by the time I take it out, I take the inside out. Now I have access to the edge. So now I peel the edge where I had a little bit of skin left. Here. You can cut it in different way. Put it flat. In little dice. We call a brunoise, that you want to saute. Or then you want to do it into little strip. One way or the other, this is an easy and a good way of peeling pepper. Now, when using tomato, very often the recipe asks you to peel the tomato, seed the tomato. You can peel it in many different ways. This one, you impale on a fork or on a knife like that, right above the gas stove, and it will burn and char the skin, which, as you can see, after that slide out very easily. And it also imparts a little bit of taste to the tomato. The most common way is probably to put it in boiling water, like I have here. How long do you leave it? Depending if the tomato is really ripe, like 10 seconds. If it's not too ripe, a bit longer. Often people choke it in cold water after. I don't really do it. I think it kind of tends to taste some taste out of it. Now you can do it with a knife as well, especially if you intend to keep the skin for one reason or another. For example, here with the knife, I will my knife in a jigsaw fashion. I go this way, I make a base, and I will turn around, and you can see my knife is moving up and down. I'm sewing like in a jigsaw fashion. I'm doing one streak here, I'm doing one peel, and I stop the peel here, and I'm doing a second peel to add to it. If I do this, it's because I want to use this as a flour. So the base is there, I can put that right on the base. See, it will hold nicely. And then with this one, and you can see the edge, because I'm sewing it around, I do a very tight scroll out of this, and that tight scroll I will of course place in the center of my tomato here to finish the rows. Here we are. Actually, I could have used also a vegetable peeler, and you can see here those vegetable peelers work absolutely wonderful for that. This is a serrated edge vegetable peeler, and it works very well. So when you have a tomato like this, very often, recipe asks you to seed it, you should cut it across. That is perpendicular perpendicular to the stem across, and then you press out the seed and the juice. All of that you keep for stock. When I have a nice tomato which is ripe like that, I could take a piece of this. I take a clean towel, put that in the middle of it, and I can do my own cherry tomato, any size that I want. And then you can open it, of course. You have a nice bowl of tomato here, and you can put them on a little skillet, brush it with a little bit of butter, dash of salt, warm it up to serve it as a garnish, for one fish or another. The rest of the tomato is usually cut into dice like this and sauté in what we call a concassé of tomato. When I worked in Paris in the 50s, in big restaurants like the Plaza Athénée, Maxime, when we came in the morning, the potatoes were done. They were peeled and they were cut like this very often. Nothing was wasted. All the trimming were there. And this is the way it was done. You cut the potato this way, 1, 2, 3. Then you basculate the potato this way, 1, 2, 3. And you have a perfect parallelepiped, so-called. And this, in turn, were cut in this way, very thin. And the thin potato were piled up and cut into what we call pomme pie, that is straw potato. And then the next one was cut into about that size, stick of potato, and that was mashed stick potato, what we call French fries. And then large one were cut like that, what we call pont neuf potato, this way. All of that were fried. Likewise with the potato cut into pieces like this, and eventually turned into football shape. Like this is the classic way of different size. You cut and you'll have to whip. We do that with carrot. And if I recall exactly at that time, the chef wanted 7 face. 7 face on each potato. Doesn't really matter. Another way that we cut potato was to use the mandolin here, one of those, in slice or different way. I choose to do this one with the skin on. You cut this way, and you have one cut with the line, and then you twitch the other side, and if you turn each side and twist, you end up with what we call waffle potato. Those potatoes which are like little waffle. Those potatoes that you fry, put them in the fryer, and from this, of course, to get your waffle potato, nice and crispy. When you use an apple, you have to core it first. This is a technique which is very good, but you have to be very careful. If you don't do it properly, you will hurt yourself. I put my thumb here, and I have the point of my knife here. The point of the knife cannot go lower than my thumb. If I don't have my thumb here, I'm this way, I will go into my hand. So first I place my thumb on top of it, plant the knife around, and turn around my thumb, as you can see here. There is no danger of cutting. I can even use this, actually, as a decoration in my dessert. The same thing on the other side, again with my thumb. Now I start peeling with the knife, and as you can see, I'm holding the knife almost at the end, and I'm cutting with the point of the knife by a little streak because of the texture of the apple. Notice that my left hand, I'm right-handed, is pushing the apple into the knife almost as much as the other side. Now this you cut in half. Again, the same technique, my thumb here, and I will turn around, again to remove the core here. Now you can say, well, I do that with a melon bowler. Fine, it works. This is faster. Then after we slice it, you will take the end of your apple and keep only the center slice, which are the same size. This, the trimming of the apple, is usually coarsely cut. Just imagine that this is a dough. I'm doing a tart or something. I will put that on the dough, spread it out on the dough, and then I can take my apple, like a deck of cards, spread it out this way to arrange them right on top of my apple. Again, it's a question of speed and efficiency in the kitchen, and that's important. If you want to take the seed out of pomegranate, here is the way you do it. I use a fork here to push inside the back of it and cut it into several pieces like this. And then I do it in water. Right on top, you take a very sturdy spoon. And as you can see, everything comes out. And I do it in water so that if there is a little bit of the white stuff, it comes to the top and you can remove it. Removing the skin of pomegranate. I use a lot of orange in my dessert, and very often I do candied orange peel, and I use a vegetable peeler like that to get nice, equal, thin strip, because what you want is only the surface of the skin. That's where you have all of the essential oil. And even I candy them this way. Sometimes I fold this in half and do a julienne out of it. That's what we use for like a duck à l'orange, you know. So you would want to do this to put in the sauce, or the strip like this are very nice. What you don't want is strip cut with a knife which is that thick, because the piece underneath is kind of bitter. I mean, it's not that you cannot use it. You can use it, but you'll have to blanch it several times because it's bitter. You see, this is in the skin, as I said, that the essential oil is. You see, if I do it, I press on this here, you can see that in the skin of the orange, lemon, tangerine and all that, you have that essential oil. That's what gives you the taste in a dish, more actually than the juice of the orange, which is citric acid. Now, when you want to grate it, another way to use it is with one of those small graters. You can use this, and that really, again, take only the surface of the skin, which is what you want. When you finish this, you want to bang that on each side to remove that from this, and this is a very potent, very strong thing that you put like in a custard or something like this. Now, if you want to take the skin out of the orange, you start on one hand, and that point you're going to sew. Again, when I did an apple, my knife was here. When I did a tomato, my knife was here. When I do this, my knife is here because of the texture of it. So I start cutting around, and you want to cut until the orange is totally nude. That is, all the pit is removed. So you cut around, you know, in a jigsaw fashion again. See, this one has a very thick skin, you know, depending the time of the year. You usually, I mean, I try to use seedless orange, you know, large, with not too much of a skin. This one is large, but that's the way it is at the market. Sometimes works out better than other time. Okay. So my orange, as you can see, has shrunk considerably, but this is the way it should look. Now, if I want to remove the segment in between, you see the other segment, I go from one side, on one edge of the segment, to the other edge, and that way it's much better when you don't have seed inside. Now the next one, you go next to the segment, you twist your knife around, and it comes next to the next membrane, and so forth. So I will cut that around. Some slice will be bigger than other, up to the end, and I keep the juice anyway, but basically what I am left with is the membrane here. That's it. And that makes me a beautiful dessert just with a little cookie or a piece of brioche. I always use a lot of lemon in my cooking, in my baking. Often you need the juice of lemon. If you know, roll it on the table like that, it softens a little bit and you get more juice. You can drop it in boiling water for 10 seconds. You can put it in the microwave oven 5-10 seconds as well, and you tend to get more juice out of it. One thing that you should know is that you don't cut your lemon in the center. You cut on the side here, you know, not in the center. I learned that in Mexico, and here you get much more juice out of it by doing it this way. Now, the decoration of lemon, there is many, many different ways of doing it. Certainly, when I was an apprentice, one way was just to cut the rind around like this. I mean, actually, we cut it twice, this way, and this way for the decoration, and just made a nut out of this. You can do that, of course, with orange. We do that with grapefruit. And the question of presentation on the plate, it's relatively important, but a nice plate. You can put a little thing of parsley in the center. A classic way of doing it, certainly, is to cut it into teeth like this, what I'm going to do here. But actually, instead of doing the regular teeth, you will see that I'm going to cut the teeth in a kind of bias, not straight down. And I will have a spiral effect. Yeah, we're going around. then you're going to have that spiral effect, which is a little fancier than the regular one. And this is a decoration for lemon. When you use eggs, a common mistake, is to break the egg on something pointed like this. What that does, it go inside and introduce bacteria from the shell into the eggs and often break the yolk. So what I do, I always break it on something flat like this. Now this is the way I like to separate the eggs. I put them all of that, rather than going from one shell to the other, I find out that there is always at least like a quarter of the egg white which stays stuck around the yolk or in the shell. When you beat an egg white properly, you get 1 cup of egg white for a large egg. So if you miss like a quarter in each egg, your proportions are off. So I cut them this way, then grab the yolk out. You can see here, in that yolk, I'll go it from one end to the other, and that will include trying to separate what I have here, which is the chalaza of the egg. It's on one side and also on the other side. Sometimes it's longer. The chalaza of the egg is actually a sinew which holds that yolk in suspension in the center of the shell. It has nothing to do with like the germ of the eggs or anything like this. You can freeze your egg white easily, and each egg white will fit in one of those ice cube container, the large one. So it's an easy way. When they are frozen, you put them in a bag. The egg yolk don't freeze well. You have to go to a lower temperature because of bacteria. I'm going to make a mayonnaise now to show you how to make a mayonnaise. Those are small eggs. So I have 3. Right? Mustard. The proportion there are not that important. Salt, pepper. What I'm saying is that if I had 2 egg yolks rather than 3, it would work. If I had a bit less or a bit more mustard, it would work just as well. And a dash of vinegar. Okay, this is the base of your mayonnaise that you work. And then to that you have to have the oil. The most important thing that you have to realize, the oil cannot be ice cold. Sometimes it's difficult to hold and pour at the same time. So my friend gave me this, which is really terrific. You push it on it and that, look at that, it holds by itself. So then I pour the oil in it. You're supposed to go very slowly when you put the oil. Tell you the truth, you don't have to go that slowly. And again, the oil, you can have a little bit of, for example, walnut oil, which is a very strong in flavor. You would want to use that maybe with a canola oil, or then half olive oil and half peanut oil or something like this. And basically my mayonnaise is finished here. As you can see, enough with the dough, they get together and they get to be, that consistency of a mayonnaise. It is true, however, if I pour that oil way too fast here in great quantity, then it will break down. Or if you have it in your refrigerator and you take it out of your refrigerator ice cold, it will break down. And this is what it would look like when it breaks down. It's all broken and separated. I can take 1 egg yolk or a bit of vinegar or some mustard, anything that I put in to start with, and start putting it back together. I can even try to do it in the same bowl. I put a little bit of that on the side here, and I will put the point of my knife just in this and mix the top of it, just the top of it, to know whether it's getting smooth together. And I think it's getting smooth together. So if it's getting smooth together, I will go slightly deeper in the bowl with my whisk. Then I will get a little deeper and a little deeper. And now basically I'm at the bottom of the bowl. So I will try to do a little more round like this. And basically the mayonnaise now is back together. You want to present the mayonnaise, you see a nice way is to put it into a little bowl like this. You garnish the mayonnaise with all kind of things and it changes name, it becomes a tartare sauce, a gribiche and so forth. I like usually to, when I do that I turn the bowl, I don't turn the spatula to make it smooth on top. And then after you can move your spatula. If you want to go a bit farther, I did that tomato before, that tomato rose. It would be nice right on top of it to do a nice presentation of mayonnaise. One of the greatest things to eat is eggs. Hundreds of recipes, curdled eggs, scrambled, fried, sauté, hard-cooked eggs and sauté. And any country in the world usually can afford eggs, and most of the protein in many countries come from eggs. When I cook a hard-cooked egg, on the round part of the egg, I make a hole here with a pin because there is an air chamber. When I put that in boiling water, the pressure is released, so my eggs never crack in the water. This is a raw egg. If I spin it like this, it doesn't spin because it's liquid inside. That egg is cooked. You can see if I spin it, it will basically stand up because it's totally solid. You get it. Now, one of the best ways to peel the eggs is underwater, because what you have to do after you crack the egg, you have to go through the shell, and there is a little skin underneath. You have to go under that skin, so the water goes under that skin. When the water goes under that skin, under running water, it makes it easy to peel. That egg is hard cooked, and it's hard cooked properly because you don't see any grain around the yolk. Why? Because as the egg goes into water, the sulfur in the egg white goes toward the center of the eggs. And it has a physical reaction with the iron in the egg yolk, which gives you that green tinge. So as soon as the egg is cooked, you lift it out of the water, drop it in the ice cold water. Not for like 30 seconds, long enough so the cold goes inside, the sulfur fill it and cross the egg white and dissipate in the water. So that's very important. 10 minutes. 10-minute egg is about 10 minutes depending on the size of it. Now this is enough mole. We call mole. It means soft in French. It's like a poached egg. It should have that texture here in the center, and that's cooked like 6 minutes. But instead of cooking it as a poached egg, you cook it just like a hard-cooked egg, but for 6 minutes. And those are eggs which were cooked in the circulator. Those were cooked at 149 degrees for 1 hour. And it's interesting like that because they come out of the shell when you take them out, you see? This way, and you can see this is the eggs cooked in the circulator, cooked this way. The texture is quite interesting because the white and the yolk is almost the same consistency. Nice and soft and creamy. It's somewhat between an hard-cooked egg and a poached egg. Absolutely delicious this way too. One of my favorite ways of making eggs, and my wife too, is off cocotte. The cocotte is a small thing like that we call a cocotte, a little soufflé mold, and you poach your eggs in it. Like in there, I'm going to put a bit of cracked pepper, some salt in the bottom. I may even coat it with herbs. So you could have all kind of different type of herb, any herb that you will have in your garden, that you will do it here. And then we break the eggs on top of it, right there. Beautiful egg. Another one here. Okay, and we cook the eggs, we put them this way, and cover it so that the steam comes on top, and that will take about 5 minutes to cook. And you can see now, I can see the yolk, the texture that it is, so this is my off cocotte. So that's enough moule, especially if you put, as I did here, something around. So you do that on a toast like this, turn it upside down, shake it a little bit. So here I have my off cocotte this way and off cocotte moule. And the center again should be about a soft egg. Yeah, this is the right texture that you will have in the center of that egg, just like this. I want to show you another egg that we do often in France, which is œuf frit, fried eggs. We actually fried it into a deep frying this way. Now you have to be ready with 2 spoons, getting around, and you actually get close to it and go right into the oil. And what I do here, I bring the white. You have to bring the white around the yolk, this way. It doesn't actually absorb much oil, you know. And see, now it brought around, so I can turn it around so that it's brown on each side. And you want to cook that for about a minute and a half, depending on the temperature of your oil, so that the inside is like a soft-boiled egg. At the beginning, if you don't gather it together, the white goes all over the place. So this is about cooked enough. I can remove it now. You see? Putting it on a plate, on this side or on this side. Both sides are nice. And I can show you the texture of it. The texture of it will be should be basically, as I say, like a poached egg. This is the œuf frit, the fried eggs. A French omelette is not better than an omelette you make in a diner here. In fact, the way my mother makes her omelette and most people in France, it's exactly the same. However, this is a classic French omelette, 3 eggs, salt, pepper, herb, a little piece of butter in there. And we want to do it in a very creamy way, with very tight curd. The curd are to be very tight. Conventionally, you would let that take and bring this occasionally to have large curd. In the French omelette, you will mix this all the time to make it very creamy. You don't even want to let the top of the omelette brown, because that would soften the egg. And you will see that at the end here, when I'm ready to roll it, close to now, I will bring all of my mixture right at the end here. It's still very soft, as you can see here, and I'm rolling. If I leave it one layer, it's like rolling a carpet. Here, the whole thickness is here. Bringing that around, bringing one lip here. Now the lip should be a half moon there. Bring this around, bang the side of your dishes to bring the other lip back up, bringing down on top of it. This is the time now that you would want to stuff it, if you wanted to stuff it. Now you want to change hand to invert it, bang it on the side. So it really comes to the edge of the pan, put your serving platter right against it, and invert it. Now that omelette should be very creamy, no pleat on top of it, golden and very moist in the center. If I cut the center of it, you will see that the center is going to be very soft and creamy, the way it should be, with tight curd. One of the joy of winter for me is to eating oyster and clam, any type of seafood like that, which is nice and cold in winter. Of course, you have to open it. There is different opener. This one, that one, the classic one, this one. I tend to prefer the pointy one. And for those small Miyagi oyster, usually you go toward the hinge here at the end. Insert it a little bit and crack it open and run it close to the shell. So you want to cut the abducting muscle that you have here. This is what's holding the oyster to the shell. And then you want to go underneath like that to separate it. And now that's it. It's ready to eat. Fresh, very juicy. When you open clam of different size, and those are cherry stone type. Again, the classic way is probably to open it at the hinge here. And it's a bit difficult. You really have to apply a lot of pressure here to crack it open. That's it. You want to open it this way and cut also the other abducting muscle. That's one way. This is not my favorite way of doing it. I tend to use a regular knife, a paring knife or something like this, and put it flat like this. I might need my glasses to be sure that I am on the, right in the middle of the hinge. And I use those fingers here to press inside to go into the muscle. Cut it open. Again, cut this one here to bring it here. Of course, if you get little neck muscle, they are smaller than that. And this is the cherry stone, then you have the top neck, and you have the very large one that we call the quahog. And that's what I enjoy with my family, a good glass of wine, white wine, in the winter. You can buy your calamari clean, but very often they come this way at the market, and you have to know how to clean them. So basically, you pull out the inside this way, which is that long thing. You can see the eye, of the animal here. What you do, you cut right above the eye, and inside that part of it, if I press, often there is that little round thing come. This is the beak, so I will remove that, the beak. And that, of course, is fried or whatever. In fact, this is the best part of it, in my opinion. Now for the body, usually you want to remove the skin, and often you do that in water or under rolling water, but usually it comes out pretty good, pretty easy to remove that skin. Some people actually don't even bother removing that skin. And then inside here, if you touch, you will notice that there is a piece. It's a bone, it's actually the pan, they call that, and it's a cartilage. Pull out that cartilage here. You want to cut it into round ring, if you want to fry a ring of calamari, or you want to open it whole this way. To use it in one way or the other, to use it sometime in long strip, like this. But that's very tender. You can rewash it after. The shrimp usually will come without the head. They come pair weight. If you buy, for example, 15, 20, it means that there is 15 to 20 to the pound. 40 to 50, they are much smaller, 40 or 50 to the pound. If you buy under 10, for example, it's less than 10 to the pound, and they are more and more expensive. Usually here, you go around just to remove the shell here. Most of the time, or very often, people leave the tail. I usually remove the tail. If I remove the tail, I kind of press it a little bit here and kind of pull on it to try to get the tail here. See, the meat of the tail is inside. Now, after that, cut the top. You can see right the color here that there is a dark line, and that dark, this is the intestinal tract, which you do want to remove. And then after you wash it. And that's how you clean your shrimp. I'm cooking lobster today. When you buy lobster, usually I tend to favor the female with the eggs in it and a bit tender. Usually the body is slightly wider, but where you can see it is there. As you can see that this one is a male. The last two appendage here, which goes between the rib, are longer and hard, it's like a shell. And the body is slightly narrower. Here the body is slightly wider, the female, and you have those last two appendage are much more, are much smaller. So to kill a lobster, to grill it, you have to cut where the line is in between the eye, and the lobster doesn't have a brain, it just have a central nervous system. So you go down there and that's it. So you turn it around and continue on the same line to cut it into two pieces. You can see it here. Now, I removed the little rubber band here. Good. And you can see that in there, between the eye where I cut here, there is that bag. This is the stomach, usually full of gravel. And that you remove. The green here will turn bright red when it cooks. This is the roe of the female. The pale green here is the tamale, the liver of the tamale that the male has as well as the female. But that green, deep green roe, only the female has it because this is the roe. So to grill it, you put it this way. You want to break the claw because otherwise it makes it harder to take a towel on top to crack it this way. See, now it's cracked. And that's all there is to it. I like to do it fresh like this. Sometimes we put a little bit of herb or stuffing inside here, some olive oil on top and up under the broiler for a few minutes. Very often, the lobster is poached, of course, and there is different way of poaching it depending the size that you have. I tend to put it sometimes just in boiling water, let it come back to a boil, maybe boil a minute or so and leave it on the side. And you have to take the meat out of it. Take the meat out of it, the first thing you do, you break the tail, and then usually you want to keep all that juice for mixed to a mayonnaise or whatever. You crack the tail this way, and then get that lobster was just cooked, and that you can pull this out here. Usually the lobster will give you about a quarter of his weight. I'm saying that a pound lobster will give you 4 ounces of meat. Often we eat a great deal of lobster in summer because we think it's the lobster season, when in fact it's better in winter. Winter they have the hard shell lobster. In summer often the soft shell lobster have less meat in it. So the front is there. You want to take the juice, as I say again, and see the stomach here. I didn't split it in half, so the stomach is in one piece here, which is that bag, that sack that I saw you split in the other lobster. This would be the stomachs here, full of gravel inside. Okay. Sometimes we keep the end of it for decoration. And the tail. And now we break this. You want to break it at that joint. Aficionado will tell you that that particular joint is the best part of the lobster. This is the crusher. This here the pincher, the long one, and that the stronger one. To remove the meat here, you want to break this at the joint, pull out the bone. There is a bone inside here which will come out, and the meat, you see, if you wiggle it right, that bone which is inside the meat comes out, and the meat which is inside there stay there. Break it. It's always better to cover it. And as you can see, this one for a big clove like this has a relatively small pieces of meat, which is right there. when you invite people to eat lobster, you know, you have them, give them one of those nut crackers, and they fight with it, but this is the joy of eating lobster in summer, you know. I have that whole piece of meat inside the claw here. It's coming out now. With that first part, which I say is the best, here, there, right away here, for that one here. Now the tail itself is cut in half, conventionally, to look if there is any intestinal tract. This one seems to be clean, so we'll put it back there, and often the lobster will be presented this way with the front of the lobster here. The one here, you can do a puff paste, put that underneath, you have the whole meat of the lobster right there. Now, when I have a fish to scale, that happens often at my house, I tend to do it in a plastic bag like this, otherwise you make a real mess out of the kitchen. A serrated edge knife goes well with it, or in that case, I use the shell of an oyster or clam, and I go directly in it, like this, and I scrape it. I don't have to worry about where those scales will end up here, and that makes my wife happy. I do it on this side. I'm going to flip the fish over, again on the other side. Okay, so those scales otherwise really get all over the place. So what I have to do now is to rinse that fish before I can bone it out. And now when you're ready to, fillet your salmon, place your knife under the gill here to put it flat on the central bone, and just follow the central bone this way. Now I cut flat on the bone, so the bone being flat here, there is a little recess right there, so there is a little bit of meat there that I'm going to remove, not to waste anything, and we can use that for tartare, this and on this side. Now here, what you want to do is to remove the rib cage that we have here. Slide your knife underneath and gently slide it, keeping your knife as flat as you can. The belly is pretty thin, so you have to use your knife flat. Remember, there is a rib cage, and above the rib cage there is a series of bone that would have been cut to it, so you can remove it with a plier in this way. They usually come out good because this is a fatty fish. If you do that with a fish which is drier, like a bass and all that, often when you pull out those bones, it sticks, you tear out the meat. So if this happens, what you would want is to take a bone like that, put your finger around, and all the flesh while you're pulling this out, so you avoid tearing the flesh. It's not the case in the salmon. That's it. All the bone is here. I think there is about 20 some bone, 28 bone. We can take the skin out of it now. If we need to take the skin for certain recipe, put it flat, hold it at the end, and move your knife in a jigsaw fashion. Still pulling. The skin, of course, can be used, can be placed in the oven, a little bit of oil, salt on top of it, and it can dry out to make crackling to use in salad or other garnish on the top of the fish. Under the skin, there is always that layer of darker flesh. Again, using your knife flat, you want to remove most of it. Some people keep it. This is a type of meat which will turn really black when it's cooked, and it's much stronger in taste. So I will remove it. You can cut the belly and use it for the best tartare. And it's important that you cut that meat with a knife rather than putting it in the food processor. Otherwise it gets very pasty. Then of course, very often we use that for steak or gravlax. Like for example, if I do an instant gravlax, I will cut, like if I were cutting smoked salmon, into a thin strip. I will use a little bit of salt in the bottom, pepper, and you can do large platter of this or individual platter. Place it right on top. By the time the salt is melted, the salmon is cured. A little more salt on top. You can put a piece of plastic wrap, put another plate on top of it, do a second one, a third one, and they are ready now to be decorated and finished with a bit of oil. The tartare, we're going to put salt, pepper, a little bit of onion, not too many things. Dash of Tabasco, a good dash of olive oil here, and maybe some chive. And that's a fresh tartare. Okay, I can mix this. And as you notice, I have not put any vinegar or lemon juice in it. I could, but if I put the lemon juice, the citric acid will discolor the salmon. It's going to eat the protein and it will change color. What I want to do here is to cut a strip of cucumber to leave the skin on. I do that often, season that with a dash of salt and sometimes a dash of vinegar, and that's it. It's cured. I would use it for this, top of the plate here, to do a bed, which would be very nice, but the question is not a question of being nice, it's a question of being good. And then my tartare in the center. And I can serve it just like this. If I want to be extremely lavish, then what I would want to do is to put a bit of caviar on top. And I have here a pressed caviar called payushnaya in Russian. And it's extremely concentrated in taste. The advantage, however, is that you can basically mold it the way you want. As I'm doing it here, to have a couple of teaspoons of it, I can roll it with a rolling pin or just press it with my hand as I'm doing here in a beautiful round. I can use the same thing of my caviar to cut this, to get it the same size. Remove the outside here. That makes it, of course, a bit more expensive, but certainly very elegant. A special dish. And then probably a few capers around and a little bit of very good olive oil. Okay, and I will have here a great tartare of salmon. For the gravlax here, you can do the same idea. Here I have some dill, so dill is a good idea with it. I have a couple of olive here. I can chop it coarsely. A little piece of red onion or shallots or regular onion. And a bit more of olive oil, of course. And here you have a great gravlax of salmon. And this is a couple of the many, many dishes that you can make with salmon. You know, for a good cook, it's good to know how to clean fish. First, you buy them less expensively, and you already need the bone anyway to do stock. This is monkfish, also called anglerfish, goosefish, frogfish, lot. Usually we call that lot in France. It's great because there's only one single bone in the center. You have to follow with your knife. Here's that single bone. You have those enormous fillets on the side. There is no bone in those fillets. The head of that animal, of that fish, is almost twice as large as the body. If that animal was here, the head would come up to here. Really ugly fish, but beautiful flesh. So you go on the side, there is a big black flesh here, and I am going on the side to turn around it to separate. I'm using my knife here, kind of rolling it on the side basically to get the whole fillet out. Very white, beautiful flesh here. Okay, I'll do the medallion and saute it one way or the other. When you use a little bath like this, you do it with or without the fillet. And without the fillet, what you do, you cut under the gill like this to go flat on top of the fillet, and you want to follow the central bone here to the end, up to almost the end. You can flip this over if you want. Start there if you have to remove the skin. Again in one streak. I will have that fillet here. Go on the other side. You basically have the two fillets. You still have to remove the bone of the rib cage. This is beautiful meat, very white, very firm, very tender. Here we are here. And there. There is a certain type of fish, like a salmon. 10-pound salmon give you 5 pounds of flesh. By the time you get to something like a sole, it's 1 to 4. The 4 little fillet that you have around here, you can see there is a mark here. The bone goes up to that point. It's only this which is the meat. So the first thing you have to do is to cut the head. Again, you can use that healer as well. The liver here, there is a lot of liver, a lot of guts. When there is raw, I used to keep the raw and cook the raw. My wife loved the raw of fish. I'm going to use a scissor here to cut, and I will follow that line here, which is actually the line of bone. I know it seems that you're removing a lot, but this is all bone. Now if I poach the fish, when I poach the fish, those bones may give me some taste to the stock. So I may cut it more here. But there, see, those are all bone for a fish that I'm going to saute. There are hundreds of different types of sole. The best, in my opinion, is still the double sole. But the flesh is so firm, you can saute it like a steak, on the barbecue. I like to keep the white flesh on and just scale it. Some people remove it, tend to like it. As you can see, the scales are very small. And it browns better when you brown it on the white skin. For the black skin here, I remove it. You can start from the tail or here. You can get a little corner. It's slippery. Start to pull it out. That's it. That's it. A little piece of bone left here. And that's it. That's all is ready to be sauteed or to be poached. The sole is cooked now. You can see, so a little bit of lemon juice. Make it foam. I'm going to do some chives on top of it. And then you could serve it this way. Conventionally, it is bone out. To bone it out, you follow the line in the center. And then with your knife, you pull it out. You can see that it will separate just at the bone because it's well cooked. Still a little pink in the center. I move it on this side. And now that I open both sides, I can remove actually that bone, which I can lift up just like this. Whoop. Usually it comes in one piece. I pretend I'm in the dining room and I'm not using my finger. And then you can place that fillet back on top, here and there. And actually you can serve it on a plate, or actually it's just as well served into this. Probably baste it with a little bit of that butter. And this is it, the sole meunière. Chicken is certainly the most used meat at my house. You know, broiled, grilled, sauté, poached, and so forth. This is a roast chicken. And for a roast chicken, I do remove the wishbone, which is here. You go with your knife on one side and the other side, and then with your index finger and your thumb, you go along the bone, get the end of it with the thumb, put your thumb in the back of it, and bring it back in front to get that triangle here that we call the wishbone here, that wishbone, which is right there, which is, you know, problem when you carve in the dining room, so now it's free. Usually for the roast chicken, I remove those two, the wing here and there. I will show you two ways of trussing chicken. One without a needle, one with a needle. One or the other, make sure that you use kitchen twine. And the one without needle, you slide it underneath and you cross above. And then you go under the tip of the drumstick and close. And bring the chicken on the side. And if I had not removed the wing, I could have anchored it behind the wing, but the wing has been removed, so I anchor it behind the neck here. See? Anchor it behind the neck. I have that other piece. You do 1, 2, even 3 turn, because when you pull it out there, then it doesn't release when you do that. Then you do a double nut, and that's it. Usually you're going to roast it 20-25 minutes on one side, 20-25 minutes on the other side, and then you finish it on the back and baste it as you go along. Now, if you want to use the trussing needle, which certainly when I was an apprentice, we use the trussing needle. There is at least 3 different ways with the trussing needle, but I will show you one. And you go in the center, you go here in a bone. You will notice that there is a bone here, but there is a soft part in one of the bone here, and that soft part go right in very easily. And you come back in the center of the leg here. Pull out your trussing needle, put the chicken on his back. From here you go through this. If you have enough skin, you should try to take the skin with it. Again, into the other wing. Now back on its back. So remember that I went from that soft part in the bone to the middle of this, across here. Now I do the reverse with the center of the bone and that soft spot right there. Good. That's it. And then above the leg here to finish right there. Turn it again a couple of times. Do a double nut. And that's it. The chicken is ready to be roasted.